Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 709, written by Mason Green 12, The Secret Shelf. I work at a retail store, and tonight I was on the mod team. We change out the price labels and move freight to a new location. We have these big carts that can hold shelves in case we need to add any to a new mod we're working on. Well, I only had one shelf on my cart, which is normal for me. After I finished one of the mods I was working on, I set off for the next mod, and as I was coming around a corner, I felt a bump, like I ran over something, even though the floor was completely clear of debris. When I felt the bump, I heard a sliding sound and then a loud thud. The shelf fell off the cart. No big deal. But when I picked it up and went to put it back in place, there was still a shelf in the exact spot as it was since my shift started. Now, I was working with this exact cart the entire shift. I swear there was only one shelf because the position that it was in there was no way there was one set above or below it. I know there wasn't one above because I was placing product on that shelf as I was working, and the product would not have sat properly on the shelf if there was another shelf above it, and had some big boxes under it that fit perfectly below, not leaving enough space for another shelf. I know this is something very small, and it isn't anything amazing that will convince people of a glitch in the Matrix, but I now believe we're in a simulation. Case file number 710, written by Scarlett-Reign. The Moonlit Silhouette of My Daughter. This happened about 8 weeks ago. It was past bedtime and I could hear her awake in her bedroom, which she shares with her 4-year-old brother. This is not unusual, and they're really cute when they play and chat at night, so no big deal, right? I walked up the stairs and I could hear their little chatting and giggles, so I decided to pop in and see if they needed anything and remind them it's sleep time. I stepped over the safety gate, so I was inside their bedroom, but only about one step inside. The hall light was on and lit up their bedroom. My son is in the left bed and my daughter is in the right. I say something like, "What are you two up to?" And they sheepishly tell me they're playing. My eyes adjust and I can see my son in his bed and my daughter in hers. I can see them moving and getting comfortable as we chat. The light is low, but enough to see the shapes of them, the reflection in their eyes and their bedroom floor, which is a narrow gap between their beds. Small English council house. We chat for about 3 minutes and I ask them if they needed anything. I clearly hear my daughter's voice answering me from her bed. As we are talking, I feel something brush the back of my leg. I didn't even look to check because we have cats and those little devils follow me everywhere. One must have jumped over the safety gate and was coming to see if anything interesting was going on. Something felt a bit weird though, and after maybe 5 seconds I realized I hadn't heard the gate rattle as it always does when the cats jump over it. The cheeky little fur demon must have snuck in when I put them to bed, and that is probably why the kids are awake and giggling. I turn and look at the small gap, expecting to see a little black cat. And I kid you not, my 2-year-old daughter is standing there in the gap. I was so shocked I said to her, "How did you get there?" And that little girl just starts giggling her little butt off, like hysterical giggling. I start nervously laughing. I say, "You were just in bed. Did you just teleport, little miss?" And we all start laughing. I am persistent and ask a few more times, "How did you get behind me?" But she doesn't answer me. She just keeps giggling sweetly. I asked her brother, "How did she do that?" And he just carries on laughing. I even say, "What is going on here? What are we all laughing about?" But neither can answer and I'm baffled. After a minute or two, I say something like, "All right, super baby, let's get back in bed." I tuck them back in and close the door behind me. I am still totally freaked out, but not scared or anything, just utter confusion. It felt like I had just looked up and the sky was green. Now, I had been looking at her in her bed. I was talking to her directly. I could hear her voice coming from her bed. I did not see her get out of bed. I did not see her walk towards me down the thin strip of floor space. I did not hear her footsteps on the floor. She didn't make a peep of noise. It was like she just appeared. I told my partner and together we tried to figure it out, but it felt like something impossible had happened. Eventually he just said, "Glitch?" And here I am. If you remember the layout of their bedroom, there are 2 beds, parallel to each other with a narrow gap in between. At the head of their beds is a window which overlooks the back garden. This other glitch happened not long after the first event, maybe 10 to 20 days later. It was close enough that the moment it happened, I instantly thought, not again, in a kind of acceptance way. It was long past bedtime for them, probably just after midnight. They had gone to bed on time and I hadn't heard a peep from them. I let my dog into the back garden to do her thing, and I started walking down my garden to a chair we have at the far end. It was dark by this time, but the moon was out so I could see well enough. I got halfway down the garden and turned to look at my house and instinctively looked up to their window. The light of the moon was hitting the window in a way which made the glass look kinda white, even though their blinds were closed. But I didn't just see the blinds in the window. I saw my daughter's silhouette standing on the windowsill. I can remember it as clearly as anything, like a flashbulb memory. It was a completely black silhouette, her size and shape, hands up to the glass, and I couldn't make out any details or features. I recognized it was my daughter because of the size, but at this point I just knew there was a kid up there at the window and I ran like crap upstairs. I rushed into the room and flicked the main light on straight away. I had already started talking and blurted out a word like, "Hey," about to ask her what on earth she was doing, but I stopped in my tracks. Both the kids are in their beds. I figured she jumped down quickly and was pretending to sleep. I actually walk up to her and try talking again, but this kid is fast asleep, seriously. If you've ever seen a young child in deep sleep, it isn't something they could fake. Slightly sweating, pink cheeks, sprawled out like a dead weight. I am so shocked now because I'm so certain of what I saw. I checked my son, even though I knew it couldn't logically be him, but he is sleeping deeply too. I just back out of the room feeling pretty flabbergasted. This time I definitely got creeped out a bit, along with the familiar confusion and disbelief. I went back outside and checked. The window was lit up in the exact same way, only now there's no weird toddler silhouette looking back at me. Bonus file, written by Elena. I think I encountered death itself. It was 4 years ago. I live in a rural area. I was outside at night, taking my dog out to potty. We have a big sycamore tree in our front yard, and at the time we had a swing. I looked at the swing and noticed something on it. I froze in fear because what I saw was a dark figure, a figure so black it stood out in the darkness. It seemed to have a misty black aura around it. The darkness outside had a slight blue hue because the sun had set an hour beforehand. I could see it swinging, moving back and forth. All I could do was stand and watch. I wondered if my eyes were playing a trick on me somehow. It looked like it was the size of a teen boy. I grabbed my dog and ran back inside and turned the lights on, flooding the yard with light, and I ran back outside. The swing seat was still moving, but I saw no one on it. As I mentioned, I live in a rural area. My driveway is about 100 feet long. My neighbors are all old and in their 70s. I was only gone for a minute. I still questioned what I saw, but went back inside. Later that night, as I was falling asleep, I heard a man's voice ask me clear as day, "What would you do if your dad died?" All I could say was, "What? I don't know." I don't know how long I was asleep for, but I woke up to banging on my door. I wake up and hear my mother crying hard. I open the door and she says, "I think your father is dead." I ran to the room and he was. I went outside the next day at the same time and could tell the swing seat was empty despite it being dark outside. The image of the black figure is still engraved in my mind, and I remember the voice to this day. I think I encountered death. Case notes for the bonus file. I think I encountered death itself. Okay, so my first instinct here is that this wasn't death, it was some sort of malicious spirit intending to cause you emotional damage. And the reason for that is, well, what motivation would death have to appear to you in this way? He wasn't trying to safeguard your emotions because the warning didn't come early, like a month before your dad passed away, so you could at least brace for it. No, this was almost instantaneously, as soon as it happened, or even maybe after it happened. And then, appearing on the swing set, that would be odd. What motivation would death have to play with you in that way? Unless death itself likes swings? Maybe. But it also raises a question in my mind about the very concept of death, and if it's a figure or just some force that manifests itself in the universe. If you think about it in the context of quantum immortality, where our consciousness is shifting between universes, and in this process, you need something to transport our consciousness between them. There's an actual manifestation in the universe that we view as death. Now, I don't know if it's a hooded figure with a scythe, but I think there is some entity out there that's responsible for this chauffeuring between universes. But I really like that idea, that viewing death as a chauffeur, not as a killer.